Everybody, and welcome again on stage of the ADAC SimRacing Expo 2023. My name is Matt, and I have some wonderful guests for our next panel with me. So please welcome David Perel from SimGrid over here. Then we have Josh Martin from SimStuff, and last but not least, just showed up Seb Hawkins from Guild Esports. Good to have you here, and all the audience, you're very invited to come over. Ihr seid herzlich eingeladen, euch mit dazu zu setzen. Wir sprechen jetzt nämlich über ein sehr spannendes Thema, das da heißt SimRacing. Wie geht's dem eigentlich heute und auch danach? So the topic of our panel is how is SimRacing doing today and beyond. And first of all, I would like you as my guests to introduce yourself again to the audience and tell a little bit about your company so that we know what we're talking about over here.
So I'm David Perel, a professional racing driver, but also the founder of Coach Dave Academy and SimGrid. So Coach Dave Academy makes basically just car setups for ACC and iRacing, and SimGrid is a competition platform for sim racers to find leagues, communities, and compete against each other.
Great.
Yeah, my name's Josh Martin. I run SimStaff. So we provide freelance sim racing talent to brands at trade shows or for private installations, really bringing together the worlds of people with a passion for sim racing with brands that need the support at widespread events.
Great.
Yeah, I'm Seb Hawkins. I'm Guild Racing and Guild Esports manager. And now I'm leading the project of sim racing as we go forward into next year and we start doing our first competitions.
Perfect. So first question, obviously, how is sim racing doing at the moment from the perspective of your company or of yourself?
So Coach Dave, SimGrid rather has a unique perspective on how growth is occurring in the industry, and also through Coach Dave, where people spend money with us, we can see the economic activity as well as the engagement, and everything still seems to be going up. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you had that spike during the COVID era where there was this huge explosion.
Yes.
I think things are starting to normalize again, but interest is still there. So that's really interesting. And the key thing, though, I think, is that we had a massive explosion on the esports side. And
yes.
For many of us, we thought that was sort of the future of sim racing, like this professionalization of the industry and so on. But it looks to me more like the casual players far more important, mm-hmm. and that's the area that's growing the most, because the esports side was more reliant on prize money and so on.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah, I think from our side as well, we're kind of, I guess, the opposite side of the coin to David's. A lot of people were obviously quite nervous coming out of the pandemic, what was going to happen in terms of the world of live events. But I think even as we can see at the SimRacing Expo this year, people are getting back out. They've got the confidence. Player-based numbers are continuing to be positive and growing, and the number of private installations as well we're seeing is also growing. So it seems like a lot of people kind of caught the bug during the pandemic for sim racing and are running with it, which is really positive to see.
Mm-hmm.
And from our side, our job is to make sure we're helping to bring accessibility to the sport and open people's eyes to it, to people that haven't particularly got into sim racing or even aren't motorsport fans. So a big part of what I do is with Guild now is to make sure we've got a space that we can bring people in from a young level, from either karting age or college level, and a big thing we're doing just generally with esports is trying to show how it's a healthy and very useful skill set to have, whether you go on to be a professional, whether you just do it to enjoy it and use services like these guys.
Yes, yeah, of course. What I forgot to mention in the beginning is that I rather don't want this to be an interview, but more like a fireside talk where we could discuss with each other and talk to each other. So if you have any ideas on what the other one is saying, just hit it and go for it and enjoy. Would you consider that we reached kind of a plateau after the COVID pandemic, or you mentioned it's still growing but not that much anymore? Are you afraid of that, or do you believe in that it's going to be growing like itself?
So I think COVID was a preview of what could potentially happen in the future if everyone, like all the brands and the stakeholders, mm-hmm. execute on their ideas perfectly. Mm-hmm. Because that was a really unique situation. Everyone was at home; they had nothing to do, so they ended up, buying sim rigs and so on. They couldn't even watch any racing on the TV because no one was at the racetracks.
Yeah.
But now that everyone's sort of going out again, we're starting to compete with someone who wants to go outside for a hike. They no longer want to just play on their rig anymore. So that engagement is obviously going to drop off. That's just the reality of the situation. But what needs to happen, from everyone involved, is we just need to accept to a certain extent that where most of the engagement comes from is people who just want to have fun.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think the seriousness of our industry through the esports sides of things. In some way, like a lot of the brands that were involved just started to focus more on that. But the majority of players are people who play Gran Turismo or Forza on their Xbox or PlayStation, who then slowly but surely start to upgrade to, you know, proper rigs and a PC and so on. But those guys are still looking for fun at the end of the day. Instead of like serious competition, they want to emulate their drivers that they watch on TV and so on. And on that side, you know, there's more exposure that they're seeing, because obviously through esports and so on, they get to watch stuff on YouTube and so on, and they want to have a demonstration or get a feeling for what that's like. And I mean, look at all the hardware that's around here at the moment, and like the fidelity, the accuracy of the track models and so on. We're starting to get much closer to what a simulation would be of the real world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, it's interesting because we do a lot of obviously live event activations with sim staff, be it at Grand Prix weekends, public events, trade shows, and the amount of people who have said, "Oh, I've got a sim rig at home," or I tried out sim racing at home during the lockdown, and it kind of comes full circle in my opinion. You know, they find somewhere online to race, they see it out in public so they can introduce their friends, then they get racing into like academies and that kind of stuff. And I think it's just really positive that we're starting to see the ecosystem kind of come together, and so there's kind of a space for everybody, and the importance is really there as well.
Yeah. There's still a high barrier to entry though. Like to set up a rig is not easy. Yeah. Like you need people like Josh to come and set them up for you.
Yeah. True, exactly.
And that's the tough thing from an esports side as well. I mean, with the casual gamer side is how do you get into it? How do you try it for the first time? So the live events are a great way to do it. And obviously there's lots of video tutorials, and like any game that people want to have, they will watch people play, watch streamers and get engaged in communities. And then obviously, you know, the things we're looking at doing, and a lot of teams are doing, is trying to just make it so that you can just have a go and try it. And a lot of businesses like that, because people are coming, having a go, going home and buying whatever they can get, be it the brand new stuff, be it the way that we all started with, you know, used stuff on Facebook Marketplace and eBay back in the day, and stuck onto your desk. But that gets them into the ecosystem, that gets them started, and then they can come to events like this, which is great.
Yeah, okay.
To really grow, to really get like a step change in how this industry is going to evolve, we need to make it easier for people to get this equipment with one click, essentially.
To lower the hurdle a bit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And like even for me, I was trying to upgrade my just my chassis. It took me months to decide which one to get.
Yeah, you know, I believe,
because of like the size of my apartment and so on. Whereas if you want to play Forza or Gran Turismo, that's a fairly easy decision. You buy a PlayStation, you can play it on the remote and so on, which is why they have so many more active users compared to the sim racing that we all love.
Yeah.
So there needs to, I think, be some more sort of focused effort on like how do we get the hardware into the players' rooms essentially, without it having to take up an entire apartment almost.
True. Do you have any ideas on that? Is VR, for example, a possibility to like get people like easier into it, or rather not? Because I
mean, with VR, it is really cool, but it's quite a setup.
Yeah.
You know, and you also need these days you still need a hardcore PC for that to work.
Yeah.
I think, like I saw some rigs around here which are fairly easy to like collapse and bring out again. That kind of stuff. The steering wheels that you can just put on your table to have a go. That stuff is still useful.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say that because we get a lot of people they're standing in the queue, they've had a show on the simulator, and they're like, I want to go sim racing, what can I do, where can I go? And I think it's that education from brands about the fact that you don't have to spend £10,000 on a simulator straight away. You can spend, a couple of £100 probably, if that, even a controller, and get yourself an understanding of actually what is sim racing, and then you can make investments into pedals, wheels, all that kind of stuff as well. Yeah,
that is true. I, for myself, when I think of buying a sim racing rig, I always immediately think of my girlfriend. What is she going to say about it when I put this huge thing in the middle of the, living room or somewhere else? So, do you have any idea how to get the girls? We are sitting here, all the four of us, all boys, right? Audience, like almost all boys. So how do we get the girls?
It's not easy. I mean, Josh and I used to run a series together called More Female Races, which was actually founded by one of the female players from YouTube, a streamer called Taya. And it was just really tough. We invested tons of money into trying to grow that series and so on, but it was really intimidating for a lot of them to get involved. We still want to do more on that side, and I think we we tried really, really hard with Taya to get that to work.
Yeah.
But I don't know, the connection isn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
If you contrast that to like when my girlfriend discovered that she could play Harry Potter, this new open world game, I mean, she was completely hooked on that, and I couldn't get her to try The Sims. So I don't know. It's just cultural and stuff that we still need to work on.
Maybe
Yeah, exactly. I think the industry is still very heavily male dominated, and the initiative that kind of David worked on that I kind of helped with at the More Female Racers was great for that. But even there, two men kind of creating a series for women to get involved with, and it was great having people like Taya involved. But I think we just need some strong presence from females in the community, and that kind of accessibility will then help transpire. But I think this is maybe where the academy comes in as well, is nurturing that talent, not just on track, but off track in all elements of sim racing.
Yeah, and I think, if we look in the last couple of years, a lot of female talents come through sim racing, be it commentators or streamers, and so there is a lot of content that's coming out there, and even in motorsport, there's a lot of female racers that are sharing their content, which is great. So that is slowly starting to get people interested in motorsport in general, but a big initiative of what we've got at Guild is women in gaming, women in esports, and trying to see how we can help that. So it's not unfamiliar in other esports. We've had great female teams join us that are fantastic, and there is no difference in terms of it, and great competitions with big prize money. So there's no reason why we can't do the same thing as sim racing. It's again this accessibility piece. It's not as easy to pick it up, it's not as easy to try, but I think in my time with meeting a lot of different people, I have a lot of female literally gamers that come in, sit on the rig and play for 60 laps or something, and you're like, wow, and they come away and they're like, I actually quite like this. And it's just it's that reaction, because at first sim racing can be quite out-facing. Like we say, we need big hardware. The whole idea of triple screens, big PC, it's showing people that you can get into this without actually having to go to the extreme level. But once you're in, you can start to learn why, I need a new pedal set, I need this. And you choose your path. You don't have to be an esports professional, so you can stay with your hardware that makes you feel comfortable, that you enjoy in your community, on your Discord every night, whenever you want. So I think it's just explaining and educating the world on what sim racing is and how it can fit into your lifestyle.
And I think the other part on that is obviously the Gran Turismo movie, which came out earlier this year. Man sat next to me, had a bit of a cameo, I noticed, but that was a great opportunity. I took my girlfriend along to that, and she obviously has seen my sim rig in the room taking up space, I guess, much like yours. But it was a great opportunity to offer some form of like entertainment education. It's like, okay, it wasn't a full sim racing movie, but it gave a bit of an insight into what sim racing is, why it's important, and it's more like we had families there watching it, all this kind of stuff. So I think as it becomes more mainstream, naturally the audience will grow, and stuff like those films are great for kind of introducing people.
Of course, I think so too. Can you think of, like, not only, you already told like the hardware is important, like to be more accessible, but can you think of games, for example, which could approach even a younger audience or a female audience or something like that? Like Mario Kart, for example, like maybe odd example, but still.
Mario Kart is one of them. Karting Superstars, which recently got released by Original Fire Games. That's a really fun, easy to pick up game that you can play, which is slowly an introduction to racing. But at the end of the day, just the nature of what we're trying to build here through simulator racing, the barrier to entry is always going to be high.
Yeah.
So, using, like, how do you take or build a ladder rather, to onboard people into a level where they have the full simulation. I was recently at the F1 arcade, which is in London, and I thought to myself, this is ridiculous, But the way that they executed on the ability, you jump into a motion rig and everything, and there's tons of them in this arcade, if you will, but it's quite high end for corporates and so on. And I thought, there's no ways that these players, the people wearing a suit, are going to be able to do a single lap without crashing. But the modes that you can choose from, amateur, intermediate, and professional, it's actually a pretty good ramp and a really good preview, I thought, of how you can make sim racing more accessible. They kind of nailed it at that F1 arcade, which I was blown away by. But I think more of the gaming software that we use should see that as a demonstration of how you can make your hardcore sim a little bit more accessible to the casual player.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe just touching on something that David said earlier, if you look at other games not related to motorsport, they're really great at kind of putting you in the seat, whatever that might be, and kind of creating a narrative and a story around why you're playing a game. I know that, the F1 games have always had a career mode, and, for me, I think I'd quite like to see that, so that not every race has to be super high intensity, like pushing on the limit, there can be that kind of casual, relaxed atmosphere. You know, the Forza Horizon games are a great example of that as well. And that's how you kind of just, I guess, tease people to get into, like, there is a lot here. And then they can create their own story, racing in leagues and communities and this kind of stuff. But offer a relaxed environment first, and it'd be great to see if more devs can do that.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of, like we was talking with F1 Arcade, the F1 game itself, you can turn it to beginner mode, and that means that you're going to get in the rig and do a lap, because there's nothing worse than seeing people getting in the rig and struggling, because instantly they think it's too difficult. You know, it's like anything in any discipline that you try to learn, you have to learn all of it in the first time you sit down, it's a lot. And you know, with sim racing, there's a lot of hand-eye coordination, there's a lot of feel, and you tend to not be able to teach that at first because it's sensory overload. So I think F1's great, you can literally work it up, and look, you can have competitions where it's all sat in beginner mode and everybody can still smile and have a laugh and enjoy it. And I always say, when we see lots of rigs together, or you know, people coming in for the first time, they have the same smile as when, like, I would have gone karting when I was younger and got off the track and had that competition. It doesn't matter if you're a second behind or close. Everybody has a good smile on their face.
That is great. Also, nice topic to discuss a little bit more. A smile on the face and the good feeling overall inside of the community. From, like, I have more of an outside perspective to it. It sometimes feels a little bit, I wouldn't say toxic, but harsh. Or
it can be toxic.
Yeah,
you can say it.
Can it? Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
You know.
So, how do you think? Can we change that in any way, or can we give them some kind of more of a positive impulse or something like that?
I think if you solve that for sim racing, you'll solve it for all video games. So,
probably yes.
You know, especially these days with prize money involved, and a lot of esports teams rely on the prize money in order to make a living and so on. The competitive nature is just, I think it's human nature that they can't help themselves. It's really difficult as platforms to kind of find that balance. I'm not sure. I think maybe more live events where the drivers can actually see that each of them is a real person, because they wouldn't say some of these things to each other in real life, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, I hope Josh can set up more live events and so on to sort of reduce that sort of toxic atmosphere. And a lot of the conversations that we have in like a high level of esports and sim racing is around BOP. So maybe if the game devs could just, like, you know, the shell of the car looks different, but underneath it's the same car, it reduces a lot of the conversations around, like, you know, the arguments, that a lot of these players have. But then it takes away from the realism, so there's always going to be this counterweight.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We've seen in previous seasons, I mean, if you look at stuff like F1 esports, once the player's in that arena environment and the emotions come out, it's kind of welcomed, and it's not that kind of toxic side, whereas I guess people can be keyboard warriors at home. I mean, I don't know how many communities you've got on SimGrid now. It's probably quite a lot. But for some reason, that toxicity online in the league races, when I guess it is an intense environment, emotions get high. But like I say, when we go to that live event element, for whatever reason, the emotion's still there, but the toxicity isn't. So
it's because people don't want to say those things to each other in real life, because we're civilized in person. That's why.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think F1 esports has been tough as well. You know, I think it's got a big following now, and you're starting to see F1 esports sort of works with players having good followings, and they say something, and it's starting to be that 60,000 people follow that, and it can be a very good thing, because we can use that to shape the industry in the right way, and it can be a very negative thing where that person makes a comment or something that those people just agree with, and they will agree with. And the difficulty where we're at with the industry, I think we all need to be working together more to alleviate where we're at. But again, as you mentioned, it's the same in Fortnite, Counter-Strike, it's exactly the same. And those numbers of how big those problems are miles high.
Exponentially bigger, bigger prize money, so bigger consequences.
Yeah, and like you say, prize money, it's millions, and so it's, you know, there's a lot on the line. And you know, it's kind of a very gamer thing to try call somebody out and try to get them out of the competition so that you can get it. And it's the same, you know, motorsport. It's you just find in every little edge, because the nature of gaming and sim racing is everybody's so close and so good.
So as soon as it becomes serious, it also becomes like competition and sometimes toxic.
At the moment with the esports side, a lot of these brands and so on, they got involved with big prize money because we thought that we were going to unlock like thousands and thousands of viewers and fans and so on, and you're not seeing that so much. So I'm interested to see, you know, especially given the topic of this talk, which is like, what is the future here? I want to see what happens with esports in the next sort of 12 to 18 months, because we are going to see less and less events with prize money, and that intensity is going to sort of dissipate amongst the drivers, and it's going to go back to the casual player. It has to.
Okay.
And sort of rebuild from there and try and engage the casual players and becoming fans of the esports drivers and teams has been very difficult.
Yes.
So because of that, we will see less and less events with big prize money.
Okay.
And hopefully that actually just brings down the temperature, because at the end of the day, we want our sort of, let's say, 100 top esports players, superstars, but it is the casual player that powers this entire industry. The esports guys are not coming here to buy rigs and so on. They want to be sponsored that stuff, but casual players are coming to buy the rigs and so on.
Yes. So I guess what would be your all's recommendation for example, the ADAC SimRacing Expo? Because I guess we all, as exhibitors and also as the conductors, would love to welcome more casual players over here, right? So what should the fair do, or what should the exhibitors do to like attract them more? Do you have ideas there?
I think we need to embrace console players a little bit more. Usually we look at the console games as like, it's not a simulator, so you're below me. But we need to embrace console a little bit more, because that's a massive onboarding tool into hardcore sim racing.
I think I'd say, there's multiple disciplines of motorsport, and it feels everything's track-based, and we've just got WRC on the horizon. That it would have been awesome to have that here. Again, the drifting community is massive in sim racing, and people forget about that world.
True, yeah.
And again, not just from competitive drifting, it's just something people love to do in Forza Horizon, again, from PC to console. So I think bringing that here is really important, and a lot of the hardware makers are, we're seeing steering wheels for Euro Truck Simulator. Again, one of the biggest concurrent viewerships that player bases on Steam right now is Euro Truck. So it's, there's massive communities for this. So I think we should bring more simulation in, as well as just sim racing, looking at what we can do and expand flight sim, for example, as well. And it would be really interesting to see a lot of different hardware manufacturers come in, or even brands that we've got here that actually cater for those areas that just haven't brought those products along.
Yes. Okay. Everybody, all the exhibitors, all the fair conductors, whatsoever, you can look this up on YouTube and just write down the ideas, right? I think that is a good thing. Okay. Let's maybe also talk a little bit about sim racing and merging, or the comparison to real racing, because I think there's also a huge potential, right? Could you think of have kind of a sim racing event inside a real racing tour, for example? Yesterday I heard somebody say, like, maybe in the Formula One have a sim racing, event to gain another whatsoever gearbox change or something like that in between the series, in between the season or something like that.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. I mean, in terms of the experience of real racing, I think there's one man on this panel who's probably better versed than the other two. But I just think conceptually, everyone's looking to innovate in terms of esports events and how that can grow. And I think if we can learn lessons from real life but still make it relevant to our industry, that's where it's important. So, we do see PC failures, monitor failures, equipment failures, which is kind of similar to the real racing. As long as you don't get too crazy with it, then that's okay. And I think, budgets for teams are still very small at the moment. So if we say to them, you need to spend X £1,000 in order to bring a new engine to the next event, it might have the converse effect of what we're trying to achieve. But I mean, David, you're best positioned on this, right?
We run the SRO esports series with another partner, AK Informatica, and that's at the live events. And some of those races, like at Spa 24 Hour, they take place during the real race, so you can switch between the two. And then what's unique about that series is the real drivers have to also take part in the esports series. So during your weekend, you're not just racing on track, you also have to go and race in the rigs. And the way that they've sort of motivated the real drivers to be involved is there's prize money the whole way down, in cash, but also the points that you earn in the esports series counts towards your real life championship on the team side.
Okay, yeah.
So that kind of boosts engagement, and there is a lot of viewership there. The SRO esports series is one of the few which gets thousands of views, but I think they've got the holistic strategy that a lot of brands and game developers are trying to achieve. They have real life racing, then they have a simulator version of that real life racing, and then they create this narrative between the two, and they connect the two with having the real life stuff at the track. I mean the simulator stuff at the track during the real life races. So I do hope that more series start to engage in that idea, because it does seem to work with the SRO stuff, and hopefully, TCR, maybe WRC.
Yeah.
Obviously the F1 stuff as well. Would be cool if you had like a F1 race with the F1 drivers. I don't know how keen they would be, but people like Max and Lando Norris, they are sim racers.
Yeah.
The Formula One world champion is also a sim racer. We already have a sim racer who's a Formula One world champion.
Yeah.
So, there is potential there that could be unlocked, but it doesn't seem to be a massive focus for them at the moment.
Okay, yeah. From your perspective as well, probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, I loved everything that happened with the SRO series. I think it was a really good championship. And again, being able to, the teams came to us at the time as a team there and was asking for advice. And we're working with, it was a big piece on just engineers. We were bringing sim engineers and giving them the opportunity to be in the hospitality of the main teams and learn from team managers and actual real engineers, what the crossovers are like. And it was fantastic. There was a lot of experience to take away from it, even if the track performance wasn't perfect. It was the environment. Being paddock side is where drivers want to be. It's where the crew want to be. I'm not saying every single sim racer has this aspiration of being in motorsport, but the majority do in some ways capacity. Yeah. And I think that series was really good. The points element, I think, was the biggest sort of initiative to make teams really competitive in that series. And, there was genuine emotion from the drivers in there. They were putting in time on the Friday in between their real practice sessions to try and be quicker for the Saturday and Sunday. And that's great. That's really good, because the worst and scary part of that is them not being interested or not wanting to put the time in. And actually, it was a really big field. And it was very enjoyable to go to the SRO rounds and see it all happening.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think just what they've both said, I completely agree with. I think we're onto something, and it's just how we can continue to kind of grow into that space and extrapolate value from it. I think it's very much the teams need to be vocal about what they're trying to achieve from this, but also the organizations need to look at it as how they can integrate rather than just have it as this kind of weird industry.
Even if the teams and stuff work hard, they're still only going to attract the sim racers. And
That's true.
like the esports guys, and there's like 120 of them in the world. We need to attract tens of thousands of players, millions of players, and that's someone who can pick up a remote to begin with. And I think a much more focus needs to be put on that from the sim racing world. I mean, obviously PlayStation and Xbox have nailed it. They already know that there's more casual players. But sim racing wants to grow. Simulator racing wants to grow. And in order for us to actually face that reality, we need to look more at casual players. And like, how do we bring those in as opposed to what's the connection with real life and so on? And that, I think a narrative needs to change there. A little bit of more focus on the casual player.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think David said something really crucial there, which is if you speak to someone about what a sim racing competition needs to be, automatically they go, it needs to be a rig, it needs to be, a full cockpit. But what's wrong with having a controller-based championship, or maybe not a keyboard and mouse championship?
Serves the real, the esports series as well.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah. I think the difficulty with that as well has been how teams approach partners as well. Trying to the sort of the way that people want to do it is go to motorsport brands, because sim racing seems to echo that, and so why not bring in those brands? And to go to a motorsport brand currently in sim racing and bring them to sim racing, they need to see things that are close, because that's what makes them relate to it straight away. And I think we're moving into a time where we don't need to worry about that as much now, because I think we've done that and proven it. And so a lot of the people going out to get deals, it's always been about, no, it's the same thing, and this can help with real racing. And actually, like you say, it can sit standalone. We can have formats in competitions that ESL do that don't need to worry about what real life motorsport's like. Let's do some crazy 1v1 formats, 2-lap races for high prize money, and engage the gaming audience that like the short form content. Don't want to, it hurts me because I'm a massive motorsport fan, so I'd watch a 24-hour race and I love the strategy. But you imagine a gamer coming in and going onto Twitch, looking and not seeing the cars together, but we're all sat there going, well, it's really close on strategy.
Yeah.
It needs to engage them in the first 5 seconds. If it doesn't do it then, you're going to lose that viewer. So if you've got a 1v1 battle for 2-3 grand, I mean, I'll be watching, put it that way. So
yeah, for sure. That brings me to another idea. How do you think can social media help? Like, for example, creating a special TikTok format or something like that, a race which is like really super, super short but super intense or something like that, where it would potentially could go viral because of crashes or I don't know what. or because of extra, I don't know, players or racers to go blind or something like that, or whatsoever.
We're trying all the time to figure that out. It's not so easy, and at the end of the day, these racing games are designed to emulate real life racing. Whereas, like, there's another game involving cars which has nothing to do with racing. It's incredibly popular, which is Rocket League. It's literally a flying car handling a football.
Absolutely.
And there's millions of players on that. Whereas opposed we're trying to the tire model to this. It's like, dude, just make it a flying car.
Yeah.
So
guilty. Honestly.
No, exactly. I mean, we've at SimStaff, we've been trying to explore short form content really to kind of unlock the event side, because a lot of people can watch reviews on equipment and this kind of stuff, but seeing how a show like this, for example, is put together is completely different. And to be fair, it's been really successful. People have loved it. But it's how you then integrate that into, the big thing for me is I want the drivers' personalities to come out. I think, like I was saying earlier, when they're live in venue, those emotions come out and you learn who the good guys and the bad guys are, and it creates that story. But I kind of feel when we're online, it's very difficult to do that. And I know that it's a challenge we're all facing. But
that's, again, you're talking about 120 players.
Yeah, exactly.
Think about the casual players. They don't care. They just want to pick up these games and feel it for themselves. So, how do you create a play pattern?
Yes, exactly.
Which makes it quick, so they can come in and out of races. They can have that bit of aggression without getting raging at each other and so on. Because in Rocket League, you can smash into someone, blow them up.
Yeah.
But that's part of the game.
Yes. Yeah.
So no one gets angry when that happens. Like, oh well, I'll just get you next time. Whereas in sim racing,
people hold their dead as
if you spin someone out, that's it.
Yeah. Straight onto Twitter, posting about it, upset. It's something else.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we talked a lot, and we could talk even more, like for hours, I guess. But maybe you can chew on that a little bit and build your own ideas. And if you have some, don't hesitate to write them down in the comments under the stream or on Twitter, or write us an email. Write those guys, and then we can discuss even more, and maybe it brings us to another level. Thank you so much. Let me mention your names again: Josh, Sebastian, and David. Great to have you here. Thanks again, and a warm hand of applause for the guys, maybe. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
And we're heading to the next race. I think it's on 12:30. It's going to be the next round of the GT 500 Digital in the ADAC SimRacing Expo. See you then, guys.